Whoa. All right. Just waiting on Rick to jump in. Hope everybody had a good new year. 23 gonna be a big year for everybody. God, Rick. Coming up. Accept. All right.
We're in. Just like
There
that.
we go.
We're back.
All right. What's happening? I was just
I heard
telling everybody Happy New Year and all.
Yep.
23 gonna be big. 23 gonna be big for
2023.
everybody.
Ed Reed, Michael Jordan.
Yep. It's gotta be a great year for GOATA.
The math checks out.
The math, yeah, the 23 is there. The number has arrived. Finally. Yeah, man. So let's just kind of jump in, and I know like some of the emails we had gotten and some of the questions like inboxes and stuff's been about like how long in those entry levels and where to start and things like that. So I figured we'd start with that and let you kind of elaborate on, that first little phase that they go into.
That's definitely a question or a concern, you could say, that pops into people's minds, or it's kind of the first thing that they start to kind of have to go through when they're trying out GOATA and they don't know where to start. And so to give you guys the simple answer is we're starting on all fours. And that's kind of the first box really that you have to check. So if you're going down to get into all fours, and that's tough, right? Just the act of going down to get into all fours, you're having trouble finding comfort in that all fours position, then the first 3 to 6 weeks is really going to be spent with 6 pivot points on the ground, which is what all fours alignment is. Your hands, your kneecaps, and the tops of your feet are going to need to be in the ground so that you have the most advantage you could have towards sort of reconnecting how your body moves that pressure from one side of the body to the other, how it organizes that pressure, because the main goal here in this first few weeks is going to be to decompress you. So we have to get you inside ankle bone high or start that conversation. We have to get you back chain dominant or start that conversation. And all fours is the easiest point to do that because we have 6 pivot points. We have more points of access in the ground. It's much easier to move the pressure back and forth. And for some people, they may stay with a bow hip stretch, a corner hip stretch, and maybe child rockers. And then if those 3 are like, okay, they can handle that, the most we would give them next is the crawl up and back. So that's kind of like the beginning, the lowest you could probably start with. And then we've had some people that, hey, just sit in child rockers, just do child rockers. And it's important to note that I think people look at that seiza position or the act of kind of getting your sit bones all the way to your heels and closing everything down.
You're breaking up.
Oh, was I breaking up during that part?
You're starting to break up a little bit, Rick.
What part did they miss?
Yeah. You just like the last 15 seconds, it kind of froze up. So that
like seiza position where you're going to actually put your sit bones to your heels, that isn't day one for a lot of people. They haven't, bent their knee in its full flexion. They haven't, worked their foot inner ankle bone high in a very long time. So it's okay to your first rocker be, if this is my shin and this is my thigh bone, just this little bit of range, right? Maybe that's as far back as your thigh can go before you start to feel tightness or some sort of response down at the foot and ankle region. Because remember, you're going to be inner ankle bone high. So you're going to be working really big toes close together, heels away, and the insides of the foot and the ankle are going to feel like they're tracking higher. If you start to rock back and you feel like the heels want to float in, or you feel like your foot wants to bail from that position, then you need to stop. So that's a good way to kind of start to gauge your beginning journey to kind of get back to your GOATA status is, am I checking the box of all fours? And then once I start like the bow hip stretch, the corner hip stretch, child rockers, Am I even able to sit the sit bone back to the heel? If I get stuck, then regress. Just use a little bit of the range. Just start to move the tail back a little bit. Keep that tailbone lifted. Keep the eyes up. You're already getting the majority of the back chain dominance for free because you're in all fours. Picture you're looking at somebody from an all fours alignment. They've got their tail back. They've got their crown forward. That's what you're looking for. Now imagine you take that all fours position and you stand that person up, and now they're just on 1 foot or they're on 2 feet. They should keep that same relationship that you saw from a side view on all fours as I remove the hands and I remove the kneecaps and I remove maybe 1 foot and they're just on their one pivot point. The same look that you see from the tail to crown relationship of all fours should be present in the standing. Now, if I were to take that person struggling with all fours and try to stand them up to one pivot point, they would just shoot back to front chain dominance. So they would want to shoot their tailbone forward.
Yeah.
They would want to shoot the crown of their head back. And that's why we progress from 6 pivot points back to 1 pivot point or up to 1 pivot point, however you want to look at it.
It's actual, like, is the reverse engineering. It's the going back to the beginning, the early crawl stages and stuff like that. The same way that the human body develops is what we basically gone back and we starting over. And if you don't own all of that, then it really, there's no sense in advancing, not just from like a word decompressed state or, you know, lengthening out the body, but neurological too. Like we talked about earlier today when we was on the phone, like we get a couple of people, you put them on the ground and you tell them to crawl, which you would think would just be the simplest thing in the world. And it's like, because they front chain dominant, because they don't have access in certain places, they completely lose the ability or the memory to crawl. You know, it's like they lost that ability. But a lot of times I get guys that come in, and I've been getting right now I'm working with Jordan Smith from the Jaguars, and he's a post-surgery guy or whatever. He's kind of duck-footed, and right now, I mean, we've been working since the beginning of December, and he still haven't gotten off the floor yet because he doesn't have. So now, you know, you take a professional athlete and, you know, he's seeing Cisco's success with the program, and it's like, yeah, we're going to spend time here. But the thing is like when you do in that first week, you're still going to get a good stimulus where you start to feel better. So it kind of gives them the, hey man, spending a little more time in the beginning phase is not a bad thing, because everybody wants to jump up and get to the wall and then start doing heel away and stuff like that.
Another thing you brought up the other day, you know, that is it's alarming, and it's something that we have to keep, you know, pushing into people's minds, is that you have to code up your standing and your walking, right? Like if you've been spending 9 weeks doing this groundwork, right? So let's say at best, you're doing 3 groundwork sessions in your day-to-day. And these groundwork sessions don't need to be an hour long. We're talking 5 to 10 minute clips are going to be plenty for that system to digest, but you want to be, you know, giving yourself steady doses of this. You want to stack days. You want to do this every single day, and you shouldn't wear out if you space things properly. But if you're at week 9 and when we stand up and you walk away from the camera and you're still crooked foot, you're not giving yourself the most advantage that you can. Like you're really not going to tip that scale. You got to appreciate, like, let's say even a 15-year-old shows up, and that's still a malleable nervous system, and we can still code that a lot faster than me, who's 35. That person still spent 15 years more likely than not in WOTA patterns. That's 15 years. So it's not crazy to think that, you know, 2 years to really get to a subconscious GOATA status, you know, maybe less for that person because they're 15, but you want to play the long game with this. You want to look at it as a marathon, and you want to stack the inputs, and you want to get those things going to where it becomes subconscious. So use those simple 3 cues that we give to everybody, which is feet close, feet straight, eggshell heels, and let that be your mantra when you're standing and when you're walking. Because if you're standing and you're walking with that mantra, or trying to be disciplined and be aware of that mantra, or be aware of your miss in the walk and the stand throughout the day, and then if you get up and down from the ground 3 separate times in your day, to even just reorganize back into the all fours position. I have some clients that they want it strict. They want the exact number of reps, the exact number of sets. And I have other people that are like, what are the general archetypes that I should be working out of? And let me kind of free flow within those. And I'll show them 6 pivot points. I'll show them 4 from a variety, whether it's like a hip stretch rocker or a, hands off the ground side to side. And then they could just spend 2, 3, 10 minutes working inside those shapes because they know the parameters that they want to play within. There is a sort of a freestyle component so long as you don't lose sight of really the 3 overarching concepts that build a decompressed structure, which would be foot control, inner ankle bone high versus inner ankle bone low, compression control, which would be back chain versus front chain, and then head control, right? Controlling the tracking system. If you get those 3 things lined up, no matter what you're doing, and you're doing them as a GOATA would, you basically pin the ball and sockets into a place where they now have to follow the bow and corner path. And so, focus on those things, but and be diligent with your reps, but do not forget about, like, when you stand up to walk away from the set, when you stand up to go get the drink of water, when you stand up to go leave for the night, you still want to get this pattern to change. You want to get your walk to change. Walk into the gym like a GOATA, walk out of the gym like a GOATA. Keep that in your forefront of your mind, because otherwise you're just filling up a lot of those reps of your day on the side of the scale that's going to tip you towards WOTA. So you're almost playing this tug of war. You're getting short-term relief and you're getting some decompression. So you should be feeling good, because these exercises, they do have a very potent stimulus. You could just sit in all fours and you're going to be better. Like, if you just got back to all fours, toes in, heels away, gently lift the tailbone and just hung out there, that's better than, think about it, you're never doing that in your day-to-day. Like, you're never going back to the ground. Nobody's putting their hands on the ground anymore. No one's putting the knees and putting the foot into an upside down inside ankle bone high. And that's a literal fact of life for the baby, for the indigenous. And it was supposed to be there from baby to adulthood. It was never supposed to be separated from this suit, from this musculoskeletal system. So see it as a change in lifestyle, a change in behavior, as opposed to seeing it as what I think we look at from nowadays. We look at fitness, we look at our body as, sculpting. Like, we want the muscle, or either you're skinny and you want to put on muscle, or you're bloated and you want to remove fat and put on, that's what it's always shaped around. It's just the outside appearance. No one's even stopping to ask, like, is this behavior that I'm engulfed in, is it good? And from a movement perspective, because that's what we're after here, is the root cause of the issues of the musculoskeletal system, is that the musculoskeletal system is not moving the pressure the way it was intended to. That pressure is going to bottleneck up through the foot on every single step, every single micro movement that you make throughout the day. Even if you're standing at a desk and you're working side to side and you're kind of going from one end of the desk to the other, those are all shifts of pressure. That means that pressure is bottling up through the right side, and then it's switching over and it's bottling up. And each wave of pressure that cascades up through the musculoskeletal system on that side, that right column, the right column's responding to it. You can notice it right now. If you just shift back and forth and you're standing, you're going to notice that you have a general behavior. If you try to get out of your left leg and get tippy toes on your left leg and get all the pressure into your right leg, you'll see your foot wobble. You'll see it try to respond to that pressure. Well, a GOATA is going to respond to that pressure with these specific global laws or these specific biomarkers. And that response to the pressure, that behavior, it was innate. You lost it. We want to code it back to its innate default settings. When you have your mind set towards that, then the collateral, the consequences of that are going to be good. You're going to get tons of things from the back end. You're going to get more strength. You're going to get more speed. You're going to get the aesthetics that you're looking for, but your real goal was just to change behavior.
Yeah. One of the things that, like what you saying, that when I'm going through a recode with a client or whatever, they kind of, you get on the phone with them and they talking to you, and man, how was the week, and well, you know, I started out doing this and blah, and they'll start to tell on themselves about some things. Like, so it gives you an opportunity to kind of redirect them. Whereas, like, you know, if you're dealing with a GOATA coach and you got the app, you should be getting the tips and reminders, the lifestyle stuff and all of that stuff to tell you how to sit, how to stand. So all of that kind of comes with the recode when you in the app and things like that. The coaches should be giving that stuff out. But you know, like I'll have people that'll get on there and they're like, well, by the third set or by my third round, I'm starting to loosen up. Well, basically what you're telling me is that you didn't go in tips and reminders. And you didn't say, look, spend some time resting on the ground. Outside of this, if you attack this 5 rounds a day, 3 times a day, you're going to get better. If you attack this 5 rounds per sitting 3 times a day and you're standing with straight feet, even if you got to work at a desk and you're sitting, you know, kind of upright with your butt back and you spend some time engaging the lumbar area and stuff to where the tailbone is not tucked underneath or whatever, you'll start to capitalize on your recode faster. Like these things will start to progress faster. And you know, when you brought up the thing with the indigenous or whatever, what people need to realize is that, you know, when man was created or whatever, there was no table, there was no chair. So the baby squats down, he gets up, squats down, gets up, squats down, gets up, straight feet. We see it in the indigenous communities. They squat down. Every now and then you see them sitting on a tree stump or something like that. But typically they on some type of journey to eat, right? Or they looking for some place to come back to and rest. So they're constantly traveling. The feet stay straight. You see the GOATA mechanics inside of it, but there's no table or chair. So that squat pattern remains the same. It was never interrupted. If you take an innate pattern in anything and you interrupt it with not going down to the ground and you lose that relationship, something's going to have to change mechanically because the system no longer needs to be that decompressed, but the design pattern was for it to be that decompressed. So it kind of throws a wrench in the movement.
I mean,
you know?
and then you're living in compensation, right? And you can compensate, like you can get away with it for a little bit. You know, you can win games with it for a little bit, and it's available to you, but it doesn't have longevity to it. And that's the issue, right? And everybody that's in sports or in life, I mean, you're playing a season, you know, it's not a game. It's not a 1 rep max. And I think we always have such a short-term view on things, especially in training, right? The 1 rep max, the 40, the vertical, it's all centered around this like 1 explosive rep. And then we're done. And like, that's us, right? And it's like, well, actually you have to do that 1 explosive rep thousands of times to truly get the output that you really were looking for, or to truly get the end result that you were looking for, which is, you know, wins and championships and legacies and dynasties. And so, you know, any great athlete will tell you that they're playing the long game, right? They're in it for the long run. It's the daily stacking of inputs. And people know this, like in other things, if you're someone that's working on your mental health, or if you're someone that's working on your emotional control, you know that that's something you're revisiting every single day. If you're working on your diet, you're revisiting that every single day. I mean, whatever it is that you're trying to change, you're revisiting it every single day. And you're kind of acknowledging that it wasn't once like it is, it wasn't like it is now, but you're trying to get it back to a place where you're more in harmony, right? You're more synced up. And you're more fluid in whatever it is, whatever field that you're trying to affect change in. Well, it's really no different at the musculoskeletal level. I just think with GOATA, there's so many preconceived notions that have already been placed into our minds. From if you're an athlete, you've had so many different things told to you on how you should move or what you should be doing or what's right or what's wrong. And that was a big part of my own journey, was over those 8 years till I met you and Gilly. It was a slow sort of, you know, like we always talk about, emptying the cup. I was fortunate enough to be able to do that on my own over time, and kind of checking around corners and looking at different stuff that I had never seen before or never heard of. And then, you know, being able to kind of X something off the list and say, that's not actually helping me with my end goal. But I think the people that are on this live, or the people that are going to listen, they have acknowledged that what they've seen us talk about, they're missing, right? You're looking at what you're seeing and you're saying, there's a question I have, and it looks like you may have an answer to one of the questions that I have, whether it's simple as I got back pain, I don't know why, or for me, it was like, why can't I throw that pass with that kind of power and that kind of, like, what is it that's tripping me up? And that's where now you've got something that's a true cornerstone that you can build off of. And that's the tape. That's the slow motion. And that's, the beauty of GOATA is that you'll start there, you'll have like a, oh moment. And then it's like, all right, let's get to work. I mean, you tell me all the time, Gary, how you have a new athlete come into the gym, you show them that tape, you show them the storyboard, you show them themselves moving, and they have a light bulb moment where it's like, oh, now I know. Now I understand what I wasn't doing right. And now I've got some guidance and I have a goal that I'm going to start to work towards.
Yeah. Yeah, it happened this week with the we got me and AB's kind of doing some collaboration stuff as far as AB Explode with some pro day stuff, some combine stuff, and we have a DB from Texas. He's a 4.3 kid already, so we're looking for him to put up some decent numbers. But when we was going through the eval and we was talking about the feet, and he's not a terrible mover at all. I mean, he's on the collegiate level, so, he's got some things really good. And he's not a big guy. He's like, maybe 5'9", tops. But, he's sitting there. He's like, man, nobody's ever showed me this. So, getting to really find out who you are through the evaluation process and seeing that, and then being able to compare that goes back to like the term that you use, checking the boxes. Well, okay, if I want to be an elite level thrower, and Tom Brady and a Deshaun Watson and certain people that do it and can have the head control and stuff like that, they look a certain way. There's an appearance, a visual that they project. And then I look at me and I'm like the complete opposite of it. Okay, well, let me start there and clean that up. And then let's go revisit the throw or something like that. You know what I'm saying? And most of the time, people aren't going to just walk away from the task completely, but they'll start to see the task get better as they go. Where ideally, like, hey, I wish, we could get somebody in here and they say, look, I'm not doing nothing but what you tell me for the first 2 months. That would be phenomenal, but that's not necessarily how this goes all the time. So when you hire your GOATA coach or whatever, and they get your evaluation, they should be voicing over these things and showing you all of this different stuff that kind of really tells you who you are, and then it dictates to them what your protocol is going to look like, and how long you should technically stay in it is based off of the feedback that we get. So another thing that we had talked about was when you're dealing with your coach, or I know if I got somebody that says, hey man, this don't feel right, or this isn't right, I'm like, send me the video. Send me video of you doing it. Let me check it. You know what I'm saying? And then I could, if it's something that, you never know what it's going to be. You come to these little forks sometime in a road where you got to kind of reevaluate, readjust, and maybe go back into your old evaluation and see if there's something that you missed. But that's the beauty of the eval too, is that you have it documented. You have something, a basis, a formula, and then you line it up with what you were saying, the blueprint of human movement is basically what we figured out. And the closer that we get you to that, the better you feel, the better you perform.
I mean, that's all of that. There's really two routes that you're going to enter in. You're going to say, I'm an athlete, I'm a client, I'm a Gen Pop, and I need somebody to help me get these things back, right? I acknowledge that I've lost them. I'm not going to spend the time to learn the system, but I want someone to guide me. It's like, well, that's what the GOATA coach is there for. And that's why we've set up the education for the other person, which is they are the coach, right? They are the person that's now in charge of a community. They're in charge of a clientele. People are sort of outsourcing their musculoskeletal systems to that person because they trust them to get those things right. Well, that coach needs to spend the time to go through the education process so they can then become the guide. And then there's people that are going to be looking for guides, and that's really the coaches. That's their world. And that's what we want from our GOATA coaches, is to be plugged into the Institute, be plugged into the app, and then guide people, right? Help them understand about their own movement errors, and then, help them understand these exercises and the little nuances that go into each thing. And then, help them understand why those 3 exercises aren't for them right now, but eventually we'll get there. And we're going to focus more so on these 3 exercises so that we can progress in the right way. The blueprint is simple, no doubt about that. The global laws aren't changing. They never have. They can't. They're observed. They're not created. But getting it back can be very complex, right? It's kind of a back and forth. Like, I just had a client that showed up through our assessment, and he's a coach, and he's been in the field for 10 plus years. He's well groomed on understanding the human body. He's well groomed in other systems, but his body has, he's at a point where he's like, I'm in chronic pain. I couldn't even run through the the assessment. He couldn't run in the assessment. And so, I give him 6 exercises to start, and I'm kind of throw him out there. I'm going to get the video back. I'm going to see where he's at. And we eventually, back and forth, I eliminate 3 of them. Because at this point, it's doing me no good to ask him to try to do these 3 exercises when, they're at a 4 pivot point, sort of organization, and it's just he's not quite strong enough yet. But we know that, so now we can regress and we can use the tape once again to identify the information that we're looking for, and that's all the system is it's rooted in slow motion. We've simplified what you need as an athlete. And I think that's the big thing that I think there was a few questions up there about maybe a baseball player was mentioning, is this good for my, this is athletics.
Yeah.
Like, I can't stress that enough. Unless you're a strong man, an Olympic lifter, a power lifter, that's literally your sport is the lift, is the reverse here. The game of athletics that we know, and I'm throwing that word around loose, like football, basketball, baseball, tennis, golf, volleyball, lacrosse, all these things that you play in high school and grade school, that's GOATA. That is like you're moving through space, you're dumping pressure into one column, you're loading it up, and you're transferring it out. That is GOATA. Like that is not a reverse movement. That is not a lifting engine. That is tail back, crown forward, heels up. That's how you play sports. That's how you move through life. That is what your system is designed for. So you train GOATA to level up anything in your sport, because at the root of anything in your sport being pass setting, drive blocking, or driving an O lineman into the backfield, throwing the ball to a receiver that's running, or a DB trying to guard the receiver, or take it to basketball and the crossover, or defense, the jump, baseball, the swing, any of those little areas in any sport that we can put a microscope on, when we put another microscope on it and we keep looking at it, all those things just boil down to bows and corners. That's is everybody kind of backs out. Mm-hmm. They have a 40,000 foot view and they're like, well, that's volleyball, so it's different. That's football, so it's different. And then you get this like isolated, compartmentalized mindset that everybody has about the body already: flex, extend, abduct, all these things. Whereas when you take them and you start to look at them as just movement, then you put the microscope on it again, then you put the microscope on it again. At the end of the day, it's like that's just pressure going into their right foot. Whether I'm a golfer, or I'm a volleyball athlete, or I'm a baseball athlete, or a football athlete, you're putting your right foot down, pressure is going to bottleneck up through there. How are you going to organize it? Because if you organize it like a GOATA, well, now you'll be durable. If you organize it like a WOTA, it's what we've seen is that it's just like a ticking time bomb. Like, it's just a case of when, not if. It's just a case of when is this going to go? How much compensation do I have left inside my system? It's like we use that analogy of Russian roulette, because you don't really know. You're just running a risk. And then the assessment weighs that risk and says, hey, we got to get on this thing right away. And then you start to formulate a plan and you start to get your GOATA back. And then you see how it levels up really anything pertaining to your sport.
Yeah. So one of the questions, and I'll get in a couple other questions so we kind of catch up with that, because we try to answer them all, but we might not be able to get to everything. But does inside ankle bone mean putting more pressure on the outside of the foot and more of the pinky toe side?
I wouldn't say it
kind
that
of
way.
pigeon toe. Now,
yeah.
Yeah, right. So it's more second toe straight. So it just depends. Like, this should run straight into the shin. And then it's like not only inside ankle bone high is an appearance, meaning the inner ankle bone stays higher than the outer at all times. Like if we look at you from the front with no shoes and those socks and you're standing in your columns, we should kind of see that, but it's also behavioral. So what happens is when the foot strikes the ground, the pressure's loading into this, but it's kind of loading down and out. We're not doing this. We're not letting that pinky toe get slammed into the ground like that, because you can end up with like a Jones fracture or something like that. You could break one of these bones. Every now and then, what'll happen, and what it is most of the time is you haven't spent enough time on the ground. You haven't decompressed the ankle properly, because from this position, the shin should be able to open on the landing. So when that shin has the ability to open, and then the heel away is just everything catching back up. But what happens if you go into the weight room and you go duck-footed, now this is only hinging. It's not coming from this point and swiveling open as every time you go down into a squat. So instead of building a bow, inside ankle bone high bow, now you're building a hinge in the ankle. And if you turn that straight, the knee's going to collapse. If you cut duck-footed and you're going forward, the knee's going to collapse, and it'll create, that's where your injury starts to set in. Then the other thing is your body wants the corner. Somebody brought the corner up early. I heard it is the hardest thing, because you got to be able to set a bow properly first. So if you set duck-footed and your heel's flipping away, you're liable to go pull a hamstring or something like that. It's too much stress on the body. The efficiency of it is no good either. So think about setting this, the shin opening, and then it going away, or going big old duck-footed, and then the corner try to happen. It's just not going to happen. You don't have the space. Your front chain dominant, then the injury.
I would say inner ankle bone high. Like I said, we said it on the last slide, but I'll repeat the foot stuff right now, the training the foot and the orientation of your mind. Yes, like Gary's saying, technically, the toes even cascade down to, they get shorter down to that pinky side. So there's going to be like a funnel or gutter type approach to the pressure, where it's going to trend more towards the outer corner of the foot. But in general, your pressure is in the ball of the foot. So really from the cuboid bone all the way around to the big toe, that ribeye is the balls of the feet, as we would say, those toe pads underneath the big toe knuckle, running across to the knuckle underneath the pinky toe, that ball of the foot that you kind of imagine yourself just bouncing up and down or jumping rope. You'd be in the ball of the foot. You wouldn't be pounding on that heel. That's the general feel. And then from that ball of the foot, what Gary showed you, excuse me, the inner ankle bone will be higher than the outer ankle bone. So it'll create that cascade that'll almost create a vertical as you're opening the foot from a straight standpoint. You're getting the foot to be straight, and you're kind of like opening up your arch in a sense. You're lifting up your arch. You're creating inside ankle bone high setting, but you're really feeling the pressures in the ball of your foot. And that works with what somebody else asked about eggshell heels. I think I saw something about eggshell heels. What we mean by that is quite literally eggshell heels. Like imagine your heel is an eggshell. Like immediately you're like, well, don't crunch it, right? They're very sensitive. You're not going to crunch that eggshell. So you're really going to keep your pressure out of it. This is where the three sort of foot positions are going to come into play that you're going to see in standing work with GOATA. So standing work obviously being 2 pivot points or 1 pivot point. So now we are talking about 3 things: eggshell heels, high heels or chuck heels, and then tippy toe. So the first one, eggshell heels, is going to be your standing, your walk, your access squat, and your access hinge. So this will fit for the person that's asking about catching, baseball catching. So that would be in the access squat world. So you want to be able to keep this eggshell heel alignment, which should feel like feet close, feet straight, eggshell heels. There's a little bit of play there with catcher, but for simplicity right now, just follow along. And you want to imagine like you could take a credit card or a piece of filler paper and you could slide it underneath that heel so that it would be in between the heel and the foot. There'd be a little bit of perceived space, meaning you're not loading up that heel to where now that credit card and that piece of filler paper, they can't pass between the heel and the floor. It's you're putting your heel into the floor. So eggshell heels is what you're going to use, excuse me, for the majority of your day, because it's going to be your walk, it's going to be your stand, and it's going to be your access squat or your access hinge, which is basically, I'm not dropping in, right? I'm not at the point of bounding yet. That would be like jogging, running, cutting, juking, jumping. Those are going to be bounding moments where you're in the air and now you're dropping the suit down. You're dropping the musculoskeletal system, the column down, and the pressure is going to bottleneck up quickly, and it's going to be a heavy force number at that point. That's going to bring you to what we call a high heel alignment or chuck heels. That's where we do the majority of our training, because that's going to be the most amount of force the system's going to have to take. So it's essentially like a light dimmer. You got 1 to 10, you have a scale. We're going to train you at the 10 mark for the majority of what we're doing, because if you can control it at 10, then you're going to be able to dial back to a 1. So you have your eggshell heel at 1, you have your high heel, your chuck heel at 10. The chuck heel is going to be, imagine if anybody knows what the chucks are, if you have a chuck at home, that chuck is like a, it's a marker for where the height should be at the inner ankle bone and how far away your heel should be when you drop into the ground. So we're not actually putting our heel on the chuck at all. We're letting our heel hover over the chuck. Almost imagine that chuck like the Jenga game. I should be able to remove the chuck and my column, the tower, doesn't collapse. Like I'd be able to remove the chuck and no change structurally happens in the column. So we just really use the chuck to be almost a coach in place of us. So if you're at home and you're doing recode work, you're doing recode 225, you should have a chuck, because when it sits underneath your heel, when your heel touches it, you get the instant, immediate feedback of, oh, lift my heel up. Whereas if you don't have that, it's hard to keep track of all the cues. So the chuck just makes it easier to stay inside ankle bone high. But that feeling, let's say you don't have a chuck, would be, I'm still keeping my feet close, I'm still keeping them straight, and then I'm going to keep that big toe knuckle down. So this knuckle right here on the big toe has to stay down. And then I lift the inner ankle bone high from there. That will create the half dome arch structure. You should feel like you're very much in the ball of your foot, and you're going to actually lift that heel. To give you a visual, imagine you had on a high heel shoe, right? The height that you would see that heel at on a high heel shoe is roughly about what it would take you to when you had a chuck underneath your heel. So high heel shoes or high heel alignment, chuck heel, that's going to be the training foot that you use in most of your go to work, most of what you see online. The third one is tippy toes. We use tippy toe to get you into one column when you're going to eventually train to that one pivot point with support or one pivot point without support. So the other leg, the leg that's essentially getting the pressure out of it, we want to literally play only off the tips of those toes. So if we get to the tips of those toes, now by default, you're only allowing maybe 2 to 5%, something like that, in the that 2 to 5% of pressure in that off column, that reset column. And now you're forcing 98, 95% of the pressure to go into the working column. So just imagine you're in a split stance. My right leg's in front, my left leg's in the back. This would be a high heel alignment. So I'd have a chuck underneath this heel, and that's going to get me into the ball of the foot. It's going to make me set my bow, and then I'm going to tippy toe this back foot. So now by tippy toeing this back foot, I'm going to find out what I really got over here in this column. And this is where we have to start with support, and then we got to eventually pull the support away, and that's how we start to code people up. So that's sort of the 3 different foot positions in standing that you would want to perfect. Eggshell heels for your walk, for your standing, for your access squat, for your access hinge, and then your drop-in foot, which will be your high moments of pressure where the heel's got to climb high because you're going to really set the full bow. That's going to be the majority of your training at GOATA. You're going to have the balls of your feet intact, the toe pads are going to be down, and then you're going to lift that inner ankle bone high, use a chuck to make sure you're doing it right. And then the last one is tippy toe. That's what you're going to need when you get into one pivot point with support or one pivot point without support. And then when you're seeing, and I want to clarify this for the catcher that asked the question about catching, when you see wide columns in sports, it's not wide columns that you see in a deadlift or a sumo squat where they load both legs at the same time. Wide columns in sport is just giving yourself, as we would teach in the GOATA Institute, a 2-way go. So now I don't know which way I've got to go in sport 90% of the time. It's a reactionary game out there. So now I'm either going right or I'm going left. Well, if I'm going to go this direction, I'm actually going to load this side first, and then I'm already set up to go stride length and set this other leg right here into a bow, and then I'm off running in that line of motion. So even when you see wide, like you see a catcher getting into a wide stance, they're just creating sort of a 2-way go to react to wherever the ball may be, but you would still want to have that behavior, like Gary alluded to, at the foot level, whereas once the pressure is bottlenecking up through the foot, it's responding with an inner ankle bone high behavior. It's not just collapsing, going into the heels, because, well, that would be its compensatory pattern. The catcher is going to be exposed because they have to get down so low and they need so much suppleness. If you watch people squat, they get worse as they go down, right? They compensate more as they go down. So more suppleness, inner ankle bone high, would be needed at the bottom. A catcher would need a lot of suppleness work to be able to do it like a GOATA in a pressure-packed situation of actually being, behind home plate and having to call a game and do all the things that are set up. So you'd have to really train, you have to really spend time to get that ankle back.
Yeah. And catcher is one of them positions that you'll get faster and more explosive by doing. Like, because you got to throw so many balls down. I mean, you're squatting every play.
Oh, yeah.
You're basically going down into a squat. Keeping those feet straight, you could program yourself like that. But, think of it like this. You get a high school kid that can't really get into a squat, so they open up his feet wider, and then he happens to be the catcher on the baseball team. You're starting to get a couple of bad stimuluses. You're getting the feet too wide. You're using your heel to drive weight up, and then you go behind the plate, and now you got to have wide feet and keep your heel on the ground, so you end up duck-footed back there. Whereas if you would have stayed inside the columns, honored that the columns are what we saw in the global laws, kept that foot straight, kept that ankle decompressed, and all of that, and that shin had the ability to open, you could catch from there. A great example, I got Hayden Travinski is been working with me now for the last year, and about a year and a half. He's a catcher at LSU. He got to LSU. He tore his ACL. He had a UCL. He had like 3 injuries. He had never played, and he walked in there and he's like, "Listen, I'm not lifting no more. It's over with. I'm going to do this GOATA stuff." He explained it to the coach. The coach was like, "Cool, man. You ain't on the field anyway."
Might as well, right?
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, go ahead, do whatever. And basically came to an agreement where he was able to do this. He never missed a game last year. You know what I'm saying? So we worked on getting his feet right behind the plate. And what we did was we went to the task. And this should be what the field work can consist of. And that's another thing that me and AB's been working on with the guys is it's kind of gone to the task itself and working from there and saying, I don't care what the weight room looks like. Let's go to the task and build the strength inside the task. Now we get Hayden's feet straight, get him off his heels, and then make him throw the ball down, make him go through the motions or whatever. And you could do that in a confined space because now they got the ball in the sock where you could throw it, and it's like you're still getting a rep of the throw and stuff like that. So we could go through reps, and by doing the reps, we make him better. Then I could put a weighted vest on him, put him through the reps again, and that is enough weight for him to get faster and explosive behind the plate. And we change his pop time, and he don't get hurt. So it's doable. Like if you deadlifting and you back squatting as a catcher, that's a problem. Like you're using your heel, but you're on the balls of your feet the whole game. You don't get the rest back there. You can't miss the ball, and if you're reacting to what the pitcher does.
For me as an athlete, when I came to the system, was when Gilly and you would be like, go look at what it is you're actually trying to do, Rick. Like go look at what the throw really is, and see if anything that's in the deadlift translates. And it's like the more I looked, I was like, oh, it translates to the wrong shit. It translates into all the things I don't want. And then if I take all those things away and I do the GOATA version, that's the Aaron Rodgers throw. That's the Tom Brady throw, right? That's what I was actually trying.
You overhand throw it, but you're pulling weight from the ground.
And so if you go and you actually look at your sport and you look at the moment that is like, that's the crown jewel of your sport, is that ability to move pressure, or should I say control it, and you look at those little detailed moments, you will see that you want to be a GOATA in those pressure-packed situations, that those pressure-packed situations should be showing your GOATA status. And when those pressure-packed situations are showing your WOTA status, it's just confirming that, yes, training works. And that means whatever kind of training you're doing works. Deadlifting, Olympic lifting, they work. they change the way that you move, not for the better.
It's going to build a pattern.
And it's not for better. It's not for better, right? You can change something for worse. And that's what people are doing now is they're chasing a 1 rep max. They're chasing the idea of strength, which means it can mean nothing, right? Strength. Okay. They see that as a squat, a deadlift, a military press, a bench. If those numbers are up, then you have strength. No, you don't. You can't cut. You don't have strength. You don't have strength in the actual sport or in the actual act of what it is you're trying to do. Like your catcher, he is trying to be in a situation where he's inner ankle bone high with a back chain dominance, obviously tailback crown forward in a low squat, the ability to catch. And then if he wants to fire that thing to second, he's got to go ahead and backdrop into his right leg and then go ahead and corner that thing and release. At no point in that whole exchange does he ever want to be relegated to using his heel and to using a hip thrust. It would be inefficient and it would be fragile, and he would start to break down, which is why he has a torn ACL or had a torn ACL, which is why he had a UCL. All those things stack up. I mean, that's what GOATA is also centered around.
Yeah, and it's sad too. The kid was like the number one catcher coming out of high school in the country, and he gets there and he's just injury after injury. And it didn't start. It didn't start at LSU.
Yeah,
it started in 8th grade when he started squatting and all of that stuff.
I mean,
it's about 1,000 reps. Yeah, it's just the latter part of his career. Now he's rehabbed, and the plan is get drafted and get the opportunity. But somebody asked, is GOATA translatable to combat sports? And yes, is the answer. And it's like you always say, like, would you rather be a MMA person that's a WOTA or MMA person that's a GOATA? Is the
I think I guess people look at that's a loaded question because there's multiple forms of combat, right? If you're standing up and you're striking 100%, like that's the throw. So whether I'm underhand throwing an uppercut or I'm overhand throwing, a jab or a straight, those are throws. You're swinging the arm, you're swinging it, and you're working that pressure wave. The same pressure wave that you would walk out of the octagon with is the same pressure wave that you're going to go ahead and land on that person's face. Like I like to use that analogy for people of pressure because that's the root of this thing is pressure going into the musculoskeletal system. That's what the musculoskeletal system's moving. Well, if you look at those, frozen frames of combat sports, whether it be boxing or MMA, and you see those frames where you see a fist like actually connecting with somebody else's face, and you see the deforming taking place inside their face. Well, all of that pressure that's channeling through that hand, guess where it started? Started down at their foot, started down at that foot and ankle on that right side. And so all that pressure that can unhinge a jaw, that can knock you out, that can blow your Achilles, that can blow your tibia. Look at Conor McGregor, goes to step his foot back and complete WOTA, crooked foot, inner ankle bone low, and he snaps his foot on trying to throw a punch because he doesn't have harmony. So walk, run, throw, swing, strike, just to add another word to what is actually the swing. Yes, those combat sports, standing up, that's all back chain dominance. That's all high heels. Get out of your heels when you're throwing punches. Now, if you're a jiu-jitsu athlete and you're on your back, then you're going to be in a situation where you're probably going to find yourself using more of the front chain, coating up with more of the inside of the foot. A lot of jiu-jitsu athletes that come to us have a lot of back pain, have a lot of knee trouble, and the majority of them are crooked foot. The majority of them are sitting in the front chain because, and this is why we got rid of, laying on our back and doing ab work, because what we were noticing is, oh, that's a front chain stimulus. I mean, once again, if you look at from the side view of somebody laying on their back, the direction of their eyesight, if you're to lay on your back and look up, the line, that's forward. Well, where's your tail in relationship to your crown? Your tail is in front of your crown. So you're now actually training the front chain. If you go ahead and sit in a hollow hold, which is a famous famous on your back move for abdominal development, sit in that for a minute, 2 minutes, stand up, you'll feel that suit, that sort of, corset of the front chain tighten up, and you'll feel more front chain dominant. Now you lay on your stomach where you lift your eyes up, that's forward. Where's your tail? It's behind you. So now you go ahead and lay in a Superman for a minute, minute and a half. Now stand up, you'll feel the corset on the other side of the body. So we don't train on our back because it's just going to light up the front chain. It's going to create WOTA tendencies. But jiu-jitsu has found a way to take what is a vulnerable position. Like, look, if you're in the wild and you're on your back, generally speaking, you're fucked. Like that, animals die like this on their back. Like they get eaten.
Yeah.
They get eaten from the stomach first on their back. Like jiu-jitsu was built because they knew that this is a position where I can get beat up from. I'm going to make it an advantage. And then they created a system around it. And that's why it's incredible. The different things, they wrap you up like a pretzel. If I go into a jiu-jitsu gym right now, I got one arm going this way in my head. They're going to wrap me up and get me. I'm going to try to stay standing and stay away from that guy because he knows how to work from a position of disadvantage. That is something where if you're a jiu-jitsu athlete, you're a combat athlete, you're already getting so many reps in that WOTA arena. Once again, like Gary was alluding to, do you want to be a GOATA jiu-jitsu practitioner or a WOTA jiu-jitsu practitioner? Mostly everybody that's on this IG live or that's looked at enough will be like, well, I'd rather be the GOATA version. Good, you got your formula right there. You got your algorithm. You need to train GOATA. Then you need to go to your gym and you need to get your jiu-jitsu skill level up. And you need to just go back and forth to those. You should not be looking at your jiu-jitsu sport and say, well, I'm going to train inside ankle bone low because I see it in my jiu-jitsu sport. I would advise you against that because what you want to be able to do with GOATA is see that, oh, these patterns are inherently, they put me in a disadvantage in the long run. So I'm now aware of, I got a new lens for what is going to wreck me, just like you got a new lens for diets that we didn't have 10, 20 years ago. We didn't know that the processed food was doing to us. Now we have a better lens on our diet and you make better choices. Well, that's what we're saying with GOATA. You're already kind of eating the Pop-Tarts in a sense from a standpoint of inside ankle bone low and front chain. That's fine because Pop-Tarts taste great. But at the same time, don't go eat the Pop-Tarts again over there. Maybe get yourself a nice steak. That's the GOATA. And you go ahead and you balance out that what would eventually be a compounding WOTA. You're sitting in your car and you're driving all day. You're sitting in the desk. You're hanging out all day. And then you're sitting on your backside doing all this, ab training, all this foot training. And then boom, 4 or 5 months down the line, your back goes. And you can't understand why. It's like, well, you're saturating the nervous system in WOTA and it has nowhere else to go but into this compressed state. Whereas if you know the good and the bad, now you can pick and you can choose, you can make better choices, and you can keep that compression as far away from really compounding and harming your system.
Yeah, somebody they got another baseball.
That's why I was
catching
talking.
Seems to be very front chain and WOTA. Actually, it's really could be back chain the whole time. Like what the WOTA part of it is the training for it typically becomes WOTA because you take a position where your butt goes back, you set up the catch, and then your butt can stay back as you set up to throw. Because one of the I played baseball, I was okay, but one of the golden rules, like I caught a little bit too, was that they would teach us, and they didn't say it, but like, don't ever turn your shoulders up like this to where you're throwing the ball up. Always keep level to down in the front. Whereas, if anything, you'll one skip the ball or something like that to the second baseman. Even like at the younger level, when I started coaching it a little bit, was always like just throw at the belt, the pitcher's belt. And if you can't hit it, so what? We'll never develop a bad fundamental that would carry on later on, but you should be back. But the problem comes in, and where you start to see it is one or two reasons why you're going to go into your front chain is because you can't make the throw, and you're trying to make the throw, so you start thrusting. The other reason why it would happen is because at max neural drive, you've been heels down, thrusting your hips for 8 years in the weight room. That will manifest itself into your game. So it's if you in that position, work in that position all
someone
the
asked
time.
about, that was a good response. Somebody asked about y'all show examples of running and throwing. Yeah, jumping is GOATA. So jumping is just, remember, like big picture, there's a line of motion. You can be very creative with that line of motion and where you want to go. The base blueprint of creating the line of motion, creating the direction, is going to be a pressure wave. So there's going to be pressure that waves into one column and then waves over to the other column, or there's pressure in both columns that waves out, and then we propel ourselves both columns at once, like a broad jump. I'm going to send that line of motion forward, or a vertical jump where I'm going to send that line of motion upward towards a target, right? The volleyball athlete sees a ball in the air. They're going to go up to that ball, and they're going to reset in the air and then spike. The dunk athlete does the exact same thing. It's the exact same jump. They go ahead and they really, so you're running up to the dunk. This is the most popular dunk. It's the Jordan Leaner dunk. It looks like it's a double leg jump that starts off as a single leg load. And so we teach this, we deep dive this in the Institute, but as simple as I can put it for now, just picture somebody running up. Jordan's coming up to dunk on the left side of the hoop, and he's running right foot, left foot, right foot. At some point, he's going to put that right foot down, and he's going to load up that right column. And as he's loading up that right leg bow, his left leg's going to reset. It's going to touch down. He's still in this bow, and he's going to go ahead and he's going to touch that thing down. Then he's going to start to fill up the other column with a little bit of pressure. So he goes from like 90-0 or 100-0 to like 90-10. Then it gets to about 50-50 right before he's going to go ahead and launch. And then that's the moment where you see this snap. And Jordan's like the best at it. He had that snap that sent him up. And you see these two heels. He exploded two bows at once up towards the hoop. But it really started as like a split stance backdrop that went into a 50-50, and then boom, he snaps both columns, and now he's in the air. And then what these guys that are really good at jumping can do is, this is what the volleyball spike is, they're in the air, they actually reset the bow again in the open chain. So now they've already done one pressure wave to get up in the air. Now they're in the open chain in the air. They're going to reset. That's why they call it throwing it down, because Jordan's actually throwing the ball into the hoop. That's what makes his dunk look different than, you guys are going to go to a basketball game, some high schooler this weekend, and some freckle leg's going to get up there. He's going to just barely dunk. He ain't throwing it down. He's just kind of laying up with a little bit of finesse.
No.
He's like getting up there, and he's not a lot of authority.
Not a lot of
getting
authority.
Up there. This was like me dunking. He's like getting up there, and he's like just getting it over the rim, and then he closes his wrist down. You're like, yes, he dunked it. The dudes that can jump, they got that leaner where they load that one right side, they get the other leg down, then boom, they set them both up, then they're in the air, and then they open it up again, and then they send it down again. It's the same thing that you would see on the volleyball spike. So the great jumpers, the durable jumpers are going to be more GOATA. You know, Jordan had a lot of GOATA in his movement.
We might get cut off in the next 5 or 10 minutes, but somebody had the navicular bone essentially shouldn't move. Well, the platform of the foot essentially shouldn't move. And then the talus would sit in there and do the work. So if it was to land, it would sit, stick, it would stay, and then
we've been
the
told
talus would just trace the
ankle's
navicular.
A hinge. Guys, it's a joystick analogy. Like this, think in imagery, think in analogies. Your brain will benefit from them. You don't need all that fake cadaver science. It's not real. It's a design. It's intelligently designed to work a very specific way. So it's a finite being made in a perfect image. So it's going to work perfectly in a finite way. Well, it's got a joystick design, meaning the foot doesn't move. The foot does not budge. It holds a shape. All those bones of the foot are going to form up to create a shape, a structure that shouldn't budge. And that structure will be a half dome arch structure. And that half dome arch structure basically almost has like a little cup at the top of it. And the navicular bone, the base of the calcaneus, some of the cuboid, and then other connective tissue webbing almost forms this little basin, this little bowl that then the talus comes in and plugs into the top of the foot. Now the talus is articular surface that's going to slide is going to be on the front. So it's going to slide against the navicular, and it's going to work in a joystick-like manner, meaning the foot doesn't move, the talus is plugged in, and then my shin bone, like Gary showed you earlier, it just traces down, back out, up, around, and in, down, back out, up, around, and in. And when the pressure bottlenecks up through the foot, the joystick responds with a down, back, out, and then to release that pressure from the column, it just traces up, around, and in, and then the foot goes with the action, obviously, because there's a healthy disassociation there. As this twists and then the foot releases the pivot point, the heel travels away. It just follows the suit and its release pattern, which would be up, around, and in, heel tracks away from the midline. So that's why the joystick analogy is much more helpful, because now you get this healthy disassociation, and that's how you got to train in GOATA. If you're doing groundwork or standing work, you're holding your foot still, and then you're opening the shins. And what you realize is, in order to do that, you got to create a tail to crown relationship that is tail back, crown forward. That's your decompressed state. Inner ankle bone high, back to down.
Somebody asked about, so rowing athletes most train GOATA to balance their front chain realm because of the nature of the sport.
Yeah,
well, one thing I would say too, I always tell people about the row. The row is if you look at it, it's actually taking you in a different direction. You're like pulling yourself, like your back is to the direction you're going to.
They're looking at
you're
where they going? They're going, oh, I'm going back.
Yeah, like you're going a whole different way. Like, so the row is kind of like, but somebody who does a row exercise or whatever, like standing there and like pulling something to themselves, because you know it's not necessarily it's not back chain per se. It's the behavior of the row.
Yeah, if you're a rowing athlete,
but
yes, you need GOATA. You need it because you got to wash away. You got to wash away the water.
100%. Yeah,
we might get kicked off.
But listen, we before we get kicked off, we have you know, anybody that's looking for us. One thing is I've been getting a lot of questions about YouTube. We have one YouTube. There's no other YouTube for GOATA. It's someone else's version of it, or it may be like, I hate to use the word plagiarized, but it's someone that's been around it or something. GOATA Movement, the official GOATA Movement is the name.
You'll see the official
YouTube. Yeah, you'll see these lives. Our lives are posted there. We'll put up a little exercise here and there or something like that. So, and then you've got both of our IGs right here. Recode 225. The other thing that we've done for our coaches is you know, the cert now is $9.99. It's all automated. We just finished having an affiliate program built out for us. So if you are a coach with a lifetime membership on Recode 225, and you're plugged into your app and you're paying your renewals, you will receive 30% of any sale. That means that when you refer for someone for a cert, it's a $300 referral. If you sell a package on, so if you, in essence, you could get in to be a GOATA coach for $1,500 and you could make that money back.
Yeah.
A recode's $1,500. That's what I charge. You could charge $500. You get 3 clients, you got your money back. Like, we made it so easy for it to happen. We trying to get this product out there as fast as we can. It is a business, but we want to try to get as many people getting coded up as possible. Because listen, I got groups of kids that come in here, and it's like it's not getting better at the younger age. It's like the WOTA is infecting them at just they little kids. Like, they shouldn't be moving like this. And the problem is that they don't move enough. And, you know, so, and they don't rest right. The video game world, I mean, I could give you 1,000 reasons why, but I mean, that's pretty much it. Rick,
just stay tuned for our website. It's coming out. We're doing some stuff on there. So if you go to goatamove.com, you'll really see Recode 225, but goatamove.com is being rebuilt. If you're interested in the cert, go to goatainstitute.com. Otherwise, poke around on GOATA Movement on YouTube or poke around our pages on Instagram.
Yep. And then in our stories, the links for everything is in there. So you can get to the YouTube channels. You could get, you know, go watch on the YouTube channel. You could go watch the previous lives or whatever. This is our second one, but we're going to, next Friday, we probably going to do this on Thursday at some time. So look for the change in the schedule because we have a certification in-house next week. So we don't want to interrupt the cert for the live. So we'll do the live probably Thursday evening at some point. But we'll send that information out. And if you're not in the email list, go to Recode 225 and at least register to where you could get these emails from us and all of that.
All right, I'll talk to you.
All right, man.